This is my talk about mastering prototyping, how to quickly playtest your game ideas. I don't like to do one-sided presentations, so please, if you have any questions, just raise your hands and ask whatever you want. So first of all, a little bit about me and our awesome company. We are Jellybutton Games, lots of jellies around here, all over the place, and I bet some of you saw our awesome booth. Here you can see we're almost 90 people. Yeah, 90, more or less. We founded in 2011. Our most popular game is called Pirate Kings, if you might have heard of it. And we're currently in a soft launch with our newest title, which is called Board Kings. And here you can see half of my face. So during the last few months, this is what I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of prototyping. You can't really see it on the screen, I'm afraid. Basically, I was in charge of developing the idea from scratch, from A to Z, finding the newest project for our company. And you can see I went all over the place, and I think in the last 6 months I've done like 7 or 8 prototypes. So what is this talk about? I'm going to talk about game prototyping, about the reasons why you want to prototype. I'm going to define what makes a good prototype, and again, this is just how it works for me. It might not be the ultimate answers, but I found it very helpful. I'm going to talk about some best practices that I've found along the way, and about the playtesting phase, which is really important. So why prototype in the first place? You want to know if your idea is any good. I really believe in testing core gameplay as soon as possible. You want to know if people will enjoy your game. You want to know if it's a good idea. If you're making the game for I don't know 15-year-old boys, then you want to give it to your nephew and let him play it as soon as possible and see if he enjoys it or not. And you need to remember that innovative doesn't mean it's going to be a good game. Innovation is awesome, but new mechanics don't guarantee a new game, great game, and here's some examples of such games. Other reason, games cost a lot of money to make. Your initial time estimate will usually be way off, and a prototype may give you a better idea of the time and general scope of the resources that it's going to make a full-blown game to launch for production. And lots of work from lots of talented people is required. Programmers, artists, modelers, game designers, QA, a lot of people, and you want to know that the idea is good before you go ahead and commit yourself to such a big project. Another reason, if you want to do some new technological stuff, like for example, you want to find any technological problems and blockers from the get-go. For example, is it technically possible to do what you're trying to achieve? For example, if I want to do a MMO on mobile or universe simulator or something like that, I don't know. And find additional costs from the start about servers, data transfer, development time, the team, etc. What is exactly a prototype, or how I see it at least? So a game prototype is a physical or digital product with the bare minimum features that you must have in order to test your core game idea is fun and feasible in as little as time and expenses as possible. I'm going to break it down because it's a big sentence. A game prototype is a physical or digital product. So it means it doesn't have to be, like if I'm making a game, it doesn't have, for mobile, it doesn't have to be on a mobile phone. I can start, if I can accomplish making a board game that, or something from cards or pen and paper, whatever, and I can test my idea as soon as possible and as expensive as possible. This is what makes a good prototype in my idea. In my mind. And you really want to make the bare minimum features that you must have in order to test that your game idea is fun. You want to ask the right questions. You want to test, again, this is going to obviously return a lot during the presentation. You want to see that your core gameplay is fun. This is the most important part in my mind. And for example, is an endless Frogger for mobile a fun idea? How do you call something well? Crossy Road, they asked the same question, created the game within 2 or 3 months and made millions of dollars. You want to make a technological proof of concept. You want to see if what you're trying to achieve is possible. You want to find design issues early on to see if there's problems with your game design. If you want maybe to iterate it and find better ideas. You want to avoid these common mistakes. Don't go for a too abstract game idea. Usually people, they think that they can think about like some really abstract thing and hey, I got a game. You have to drill down, you have to really figure out what is your game about, what's the core game loop, what are people trying to achieve. If your game is about matching free candies, so focus on that. If your game is about making a MOBA for mobile, make that experience as fun as possible. Doing an unrealistic scope for your available resources, like, I don't know, writing an MMO with one person, or testing something that's off topic. Basically anything that's unrelated to your core game idea is off topic in general. So how do we prototype exactly? You want to plan ahead. I recommend writing a game design document as soon as possible. It has to be really short and sweet, around 1 or 2 pages long, and should specify exactly what you want to implement and what you want to achieve and what you want to test. Afterwards, I like to set a time and prioritize my task. I usually prototype can be anywhere from 2 days to a month, and I set the features by must have, should have, and could have. And by the time that I dedicate it to the prototype, I know that the must have should happen, must happen, the should have should happen, and the could have it's if I have enough time. And eventually, I set a playtest date. And this makes you much more committed to finishing it on time, because as soon as you commit to showing your game to other people, you'll have much more incentive to finish it and do as much as possible. You want to focus on the important stuff. Ask about every feature. Is it really necessary? Does it directly feed into my core game idea? Focus on what you want to find out. Focus about mechanics, about controls, about gameplay, about the important questions. Don't focus on sound, UI, content, stuff like that, unless it's directly related to your game idea. And avoid premature optimization. It's a prototype. You're probably going to throw it out in the end. That's okay. Don't reinvent the wheel. Resist the temptation to write stuff just because it's fun. You can find lots of stuff online. This is also my next point, is buying stuff from the Unity Asset Store has amazing stuff. Mixamo, I don't know, sounds, free sounds, textures. Just people enjoy doing the creative stuff, but basically you want to test your game idea again. This is so important. You want to make it good enough. This is you can't really see it, but this is an actual screenshot from Clash Royale's prototype back from 2013. It's basically a blue screen with some red and blue units, the circles and squares. And they knew exactly what the game was. And they knew that if the game was good, when it's going to have that Supercell finishing quality, it's going to be amazing. It's going to make a whole lot of money. I will get to another point soon about your question about what I do keep from it. So basically, you can see that the guys at Supercell, they knew that if you have a good game and you add good graphics to it, it's going to be a great game. But if you have a bad game and you put good graphics on it, it will still be a bad game. So remember, it doesn't have to be pretty. You're just testing how fun the idea is. Yeah, you need to expect a lot of failure, and it's okay. This is really important. You don't fall in love with your ideas. People might hate them. They might not understand them. It might sound great in your head and eventually be a really bad idea. It happens. And regarding your question, maintain a prototyping utility bag. What do I mean by that is try to find stuff that you can use across prototypes, whether it's 3D models, sounds, music, code, stuff like that. And I try to carry it along the way. When I make my next prototype, I can do it much faster and reuse stuff that I've done before instead of just writing it all up from the start. So now I'm going to talk about the playtesting phase, which is, in my opinion, the most important phase. And if you take one thing from this lecture, please let it be this. So remember that it's going to be rough. Your prototype is going to be very rough. You need to explain this to your playtesters, because people, when you give them a game to play, they expect to play something after it's Been went over by a dozen of developers, QA, 3D modeling, art direction, everything. And you're going to show something really rough, and people need to understand this. Explain to them that there are temporary graphics. Basically, like in the picture I showed you before, circles are Vikings and squares are giants. And explain, this is really important, that you're not testing for bugs. You're not testing to see like if the game's broken or not. It's going to be broken. They need to test the game idea, that's it, just to see if the game is fun or not. You want to watch your playtesters. You can see a playtester's first impression exactly once. You want to keep your mouth shut, just look at them and write everything down. If they ask you questions, don't answer. Just look at them play, look what they don't understand, look at how they're reacting to your controls, look how they're reacting to your game ideas, look if they understand it and if they enjoy it. Personally, when I usually make multiplayer games, because that's part of our DNA in the company. So when I give the games out to playtesting, I like to look at the group dynamics and see how they interact with each other. So that's the main thing I'm looking for. Don't defend your game. This is really important again. You need to listen. You're not here to get an ego boost. You want to learn from this experience, and you want to make the best game that you can. It's not about you, it's about the game. And seriously, giving your prototype to play is nerve-wracking. It's going to look really bad. You want to add more features. It has tons of bugs, and people just might not like it. And you have to prepare yourself, and that's totally fine. You want to survey your playtesters. Most people don't know how to describe what they feel about the game. It's your job to understand what they're saying. When they say they don't like a mechanic, why don't they like it? If they say they do like something, why do they like it? That's your job as a game designer. You want to try and break down questions to atomic mechanics. You want to ask, do they like the controls? How easy was it playing the warrior? Did you enjoy playing with your friends online? Be as specific as possible. Don't ask, did you enjoy the game in general? That's a good question to start with, but then start drilling down. You want to really break down each component and see how people react to it. And most importantly, you need to iterate. If the idea isn't good, learn from it, move on from the next game. If it is good, take the feedback that you received, do another iteration on the game, get feedback again and playtest again, and do this until either you come to the conclusion that it's not a good idea, or it's a terrific idea and go with it. And most importantly, you have to love the idea. If you don't believe in it, don't do it. That works for me eventually, you know. So I'm just one data point. And finally, do postmortems, reflect on what went well and what went wrong. Again, this is a learning process, so try to learn as much as possible from it. Try to extract any reusable code or graphics, models, sounds, whatever. And remember that creativity can be very hard. It can take you a day, a month, a year, or even a lifetime to make one game that you and people will love. And this is a really tough process, and a lot of failure is expected on the way. This is a presentation I've done a few months back, and since then I've chosen a game that we're currently taking to production. Every 2 weeks, our team sets out a build. We give it to players to play, and we see how they react to it. And you can learn so much. The game changed almost 180 degrees since I had the initial idea, because of all the feedback, this important feedback that I got from people, and giving it to real people to play as soon as possible. Seriously, it's so important. I know so many talented game developers that they have this awesome idea, but they want to work on it in their cave, and only when it's perfect to show it to the world. Don't do that. Just quick. In my opinion, you should do it as soon as possible. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Quick question for myself is, where are you finding these game testers, and how does that process work?
Okay. Luckily, we have a lot of people in the company, so I can just pick up people and tell them, hey, come play a game. Besides that, depending on your target audience, for example, I give it to my nephews, my wife, my mother, I don't know. Depending who's the target audience, you know. If you're making a hardcore game, it's probably not a good idea to give it to your mom, but yeah.
Depending on who your mom is, I guess.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's going to be rough and the graphics are not final and the mechanics are not final and everything. And so when you give it to a tester, obviously there's a lot. And you mentioned, I think you said the word explain like 3 times. But on the other hand, you said you need to shut up and just see what the person is doing.
I mean, okay, that's a good question.
I know what you mean, but I'm saying it's hard to give something that is really rough and it looks bad, like what you showed on Clash Royale. It looks bad to someone, and you really want to get candid feedback on if he likes the game or not. But he's seeing squares and circles, so he's having a hard time actually knowing if he's going to like it or not when it's final. How do you cope with that?
That's a good question. Before I start the playtest, I explain these things to the people. But during the play session, I shut my mouth. And honestly, I got the best feedback by people from our art department that they love flashy graphics and stuff like that. And I gave them a game that looked like shit. And he came to me and he said at the end of the playtest, he said, "Listen, man, I never believed that I can play a game that looks so bad and enjoy it so much." And this was like the green stamp for me to know that this idea is good. It's going to work. So, and sometimes it's not going to work, you know. But you need to find people that will understand that it's a prototype. You can't outsource it to India or something like that because they probably won't understand.
I've heard people say that if you use place testers that know you, your feedback might not be objective because they don't want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
Have you found that to be a problem?
Well, I'm the boss, so that's even a harder position for me to be in. What I do is I send out anonymous Google survey. This way, I don't know who's answering, and I explain it to them that it's anonymous, and I ask for their real and honest. I keep repeating that I want their honest and brutal opinion, and I am not looking to get my ego stroked, and I want to really hear what they think about the game. So far, I hope I'm in the right direction, you know. I think you can't know until it's really out there, but just try to iterate to repeat it to the people that you give to play your game and try to get their honest opinion. Sometimes people will tell you nicely that they don't like it and try to listen and don't explain why it's good. That's something that at least I tend to do sometimes. So just to try to avoid it.
Hi. How do you decide what's a good feedback and what's a bad feedback for your game?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think it depends on what I'm testing. Like for the game that I eventually decided to go with, the first playtest, I wanted to see people shouting and yelling at each other. This was my benchmark, and I gave them to play it. They played for about 30-40 minutes and shouted at each other and yelled and did sounds, and it was awesome. It depends on what you're testing.
Hi, I'm Ophir from Triple Eight. You mentioned something about the Postmortem.
Yeah.
Right, so you use this to actually change stuff in the game, or you just write notes and implement it in the next one?
I write notes regarding every part of the process, whether it's technical, game design, whatever. Whatever you can possibly learn from the experience, whether you did good or bad, you should learn from it. If I find, for example, a game mechanic that I enjoyed or some sort of loop that I later can use it somewhere else, or if it's something in the process that I did right, brainstorming that went well, I don't know, everything. It could be anything.
Wow, this is really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.